Hello, we're reading from The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. Really good book. Um, Deals with what we call mixed race. Uh, we call black people who are passing. They're so light. They're passing. We're so bizarre in this society that you even have some white people that will pass for black to run organizations, but only to run organizations, like Rachel Dolezal did. So they're benefiting because they can't really get as far in the white world. Maybe they're too mediocre, and so they'll come over to the black world and say, I'm black, and start an organization. And because they're so light, get all the funding and go. So it's weird. Oh man, I forgot when. Okay. And so for a couple of years, my life was divided between my music and my school books. Music took up the greater part of my time. I had no playmates, but amused myself with games, some of them of my own invention, which could be played alone. I knew a few boys whom I had met at church, which I attended with my mother, but I had formed no close friendships with any of them. Then, when I was 9 years old, my mother decided to enter me in the public school. So all at once I found myself thrown among a crowd of boys of all sizes and kinds. Some of them seemed to me like savages. I shall never forget the bewilderment, the pain, the heartsickness of that first day at school. I seemed to be the only stranger in the place. Every other boy seemed to know every other boy. I was fortunate enough, however, to be assigned to a teacher who knew me. My mother made her dresses. She was one of the ladies who used to pat me on the head and kiss me. She had the tact to address a few words directly to me. This gave me a certain sort of standing in the class and put me somewhat at ease. Within a few days, I had made one staunch friend and was on fairly good terms with most of the boys. I was shy of the girls and remained so. Even now, a word or look from a pretty woman sets me all a tremble. This friend I bound to me with hooks of steel, in a very simple way. He was a big, awkward boy with a face full of freckles and a head full of very red hair. He was perhaps 14 years of age, that is, 4 or 5 years older than any other boy in the class. The seniority was due to the fact that he had spent twice the required amount of time in several of the preceding classes. I had not been at school many hours before I felt that Redhead, as I involuntarily called him, and I were to be friends. I do not doubt that this feeling was strengthened by the fact that I had been quick enough to see that a big, strong boy was a friend to be desired at a public school. And perhaps in spite of his dullness, Redhead had been able to discern that I could be of service to him. At any rate, there was a simultaneous mutual attraction. The teacher had strung the class promiscuously around the wall of the room for a sort of trial heat for places of rank. When the line was straightened out, I found that by skillful maneuvering, I had placed myself third and piloted Redhead to the place next to me. The teacher began by giving us to spell the words corresponding to our order in the line. Spell first, spell second, spell third. I rattled off THIRD, third, in a way which said, why don't you give us something hard? As the words went down the line, I could see how lucky I had been to get a good place together with an easy word. As young as I was, I felt impressed with the unfairness of the whole proceeding when I saw the tail enders going down before 12th and 20th, and I felt sorry for those who had to spell such words in order to hold a low position. Spell fourth, Redhead, with his hands clutched tightly behind his back, began bravely, FORTH, like a flash score of hands went up, and the teacher began saying no Snapping of fingers, no snapping of fingers. This was the first word missed, and it seemed to me to some of the scholars were about to lose their senses. Some were dancing up and down on one foot with a hand above their heads, the fingers working furiously and joy beaming all over their faces. Others stood still, their hands raised not so high, their fingers working less rapidly, and their faces expressed not quite so much happiness. There were still others who did not move or raise their hands, but still with great wrinkles on their foreheads, looking very thoughtful. I remember in school when we used to do class participation, and I taught in school, and they don't really encourage it as much. They want children to volunteer. That was 12 or 13 years ago. I don't know what they do now. Actually, it don't really matter now because nobody's in the classroom, right? Um, so whole new world. But at some period, they had stopped making you do class participation because it was embarrassing to children. So I would say between the 90s and not that we ever got a good education as black people if you didn't educate yourself. Or I would say anybody if you didn't educate yourself. But from the 90s to I would say up until I left the system 2002, black people have been getting a very poor, as we would say, piss poor education. I don't care what award you got, and I don't care what A pluses and 4.0. You were getting a piss poor education. So for the most part, and it's a shame. It's a shame. But now we have a chance to really get good educations. So we'll see what happens. Until next time, take care of yourself, your mind, your body. Thank you for your support. Pass it around to friends. Use it for homeschooling and be safe.